Okay, we'll call the city council public hearing of June 1st, 6:45 PM to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ellison,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer is absent, Ann Schaefer,
Here.
Kristen Carpenter,
Here.
Ken Jones.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, this is a public hearing on Resolution 062218, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, setting the property tax mill levy for the 2022 tax year at 11.54 mills for all properties in the city of Cordova. So, floor is open. Anybody wants to comment? Doesn't appear to be anybody at this point in time, so we'll take a break for, I don't know, 5-6 minutes and give anybody a chance to come in. So we'll stand at ease.
You've been watching too much Juno.
Has everyone here?
Brief it.
There's
Clay's been in the sun.
poster things, not poster, pieces of art related to St. Peter's Religious and Gary Stevens, and I want everyone to sign.
I'm so jealous of his tan.
Yeah.
Oh.
Public hearing, resolution 08-22-18, setting, or 06-22-18, setting the mill rate at 11.54 for the year 2022. Any comments? Hearing none then, seeing no further comments, we will adjourn the public hearing. We'll start the regular meeting at 7.
Why did we change it in 2002? I feel like they were meeting less than and having trouble getting more. And everyone decided we're not getting rid of them altogether, and let's just lower it and see if that helps. And then it's been at 5. I tried to look at, the ordinance had no whereases. That's why, Helen and I did these whereases, because we want a capital Y. So that a person like me, 20 years later, is looking at it and wondering, what that happened? So then, the public hearing and both readings, like 7-0 votes and no comments in the minutes. But you're not supposed to put a ton of comments in the minutes, It's supposed to be action, but then they're not valuable. But then that's where the whereas comes, even in an ordinance. I don't even remember who was voting. I think I might have been. Did I print it? Thought I included it. I'm trying to remember. I don't know who was on the commission.
His home church was still alive, so he signed the ordinance.
Oh, yeah. Well, he was here the first few years I was here.
Thumbs up. Okay, ready? Okay, we'll call the regular city council meeting of June 1st, 7 p.m. to order. You stand and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Allison,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer is absent, Ann Schaefer,
Here.
Kristen Carpenter,
Here.
Ken Jones.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Councilmember
I just
Sherman.
wanted to point out that I brought to the attention of city clerk, there's a small typo, and she's going to fix that in the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it was missing your extra comments.
okay. Any other items on the agenda? Hearing none, then the agenda will stand approved. Conflicts of interest, ex parte communications, anything to disclose? Seeing none?
Mr.
Oh,
Mayor,
go ahead.
I'm not sure the process, but one of the items on the agenda, I guess I'm not fully sure, but I feel as if there could be a perceived conflict for a member of council on item 14. Councilmember Sherman's husband worked for the Forest Service for many years, and that's kind of a, maybe we need to separate that into two separate items, one to expand the commission and one to add the Forest Service seat.
Is that what the ordinance is doing?
No. And it's not a substantial financial interest in any way, I don't believe.
Yeah, as I read it, there isn't a designated seat for anybody currently as it's written. I think I know where you're going with that, but, and where the intent comes from, and that, I think that'll all be discussed, but if it gets to that point, I think we can, but I wouldn't real conflict at this point in time unless council wants to overrule that. Okay, any other conflicts to disclose? Appreciate you bringing that up though, because we'll just keep that in mind. Communications by and petitions for visitors. Have no guest speakers, so open for audience comments regarding agenda items.
Clay Copeland, 100 Jensen Drive. I've got this little 2-day cold that's going around. I did test negative for COVID, so it's just the bargain basement cold. I did want to testify in favor of that ordinance 1200 with, I guess, just a couple of cautionary concerns. It is a working harbor and does have very heavy commercial fishermen representation right now. I think that's appropriate. They've been very strong advocates for the work that the city is doing now in upgrading the harbor and accessing infrastructure funds to make it more workable. But I do like that the ordinance is expanding the representation. And I do like the ex officio approach where state and federal agencies can participate in the discussion but aren't necessarily voting seats. And I do like the idea that other business uses in the harbor like Shoreside Petroleum and their interest and our growing aquaculture and mariculture and our fishing and just tourism charters and potential cruise ships can have a voice, at least, if not a voting seat on the commission. And I think Councilman Baylor pointed out a couple, 3 years ago, council was contemplating whether or not to even have a harbor commission because of low participation. So it's great to see expanded participation. I think the more broad-based community support we can get for improvements to the harbor and more support from a broader diversity of users groups, it can help. I do have a friend that has a recreational vessel in the harbor, and it's very expensive, even for winter use when there's low commercial use in the harbor. And I think there's opportunities there to expand the revenues in that off season that can help spread those costs for the commercial uses in the summer. So I think it's all good and supported. And finally, I just want to mention that Senator Murkowski is going to be here this weekend for Copper River Nouveau. She's in a position, she's helped pass this bipartisan infrastructure funding, and there's a great opportunity for her community meet and greet from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at the Reluctant Fisherman to advocate for that funding for the harbor, and would encourage you as mayor and council to do that and in the community at large as well. And I did want to put a voice in for the commercial fishery, though their past frustration has been that a lot of these ordinances are contemplated during the peak of the season when they don't have an opportunity to testify. So thank you for your work, and those are my comments.
What's the timing again of Murkowski's?
So Senator Murkowski will be at the Reluctant Fisherman from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. On Sunday at the Reluctant Fisherman for a community meet and greet. She is campaigning, and there's a fundraiser and so forth, and
Thank you.
I've got signs if anybody's interested. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
David Romhelp, Mile 6, Copper River Highway. And I would like to voice concerns over Ordinance 1200. The city code established the Harbor Commission similar to other city commissions made up of residents who qualify as voters in the city of Cordova. There is no instances in code of ex officio members allowed other than city staff or city council members. So this ordinance is something new to our code.
For the Harbor Commission, sorry.
Other than staff or council members or city engineer or city attorney, there are no ex officio members. So for example, the city council is comprised of, and I'm reading from code here, quote, only qualified voters of the city who, at the time of their election or appointment to fill a vacancy, are at least 18 years old and have resided within the city at least 1 year. Planning Commission. Only residents of the city who qualify as municipal voters shall be entitled to serve on the Planning Commission. Parks and Rec. The Advisory Parks and Rec Commission shall consist of 7 members. Only residents of the city who qualify as municipal voters shall be allowed to serve on the commission. The Library Board. Only residents of the city who qualify as municipal voters shall be entitled to serve on the Library Board. The School Board. The existing school board composed of 5 members who are and shall be qualified voters of the city, etc. And yes, the Harbor Commission. Only residents of the city who qualify as municipal voters shall be entitled to serve on the Harbor Commission. Okay, the key words here are entitles and residents. Only residents of the city who qualify as municipal voters shall be entitled to serve. But this ordinance, at least the half of it regarding entities and agencies, creates another form of entitlement other than that of those entitled as residents qualified to vote. It's rather a staggering proposition. What interest, entities, or agencies are we entitling to sit at the table? The Harbor Commission was established to give the City Council, Mayor, and staff the advice of the citizens regarding matters of ports and harbors. To cut to the chase here, it is my experience that ex officio membership in this form often leads to disproportionate representation in a body's decisions. Formalizing ex officio members from entities or agencies subverts the established process of citizens' advice relied upon by council. It will stifle commission deliberations, and it will demean the value of the process of advising the council. The considerations of such interest from entities may be voiced, but by citizens in their capacity as members of the public or as representatives of such interests at public comment. But it should not take the form of representatives of a particular interest with a seat at the table. Additions of ex officio members in this case will likely result in a less functional and democratic Harbor Commission. And if you doubt that, I ask you to use your imagination for what it would be like if you had 3 or 4 ex officio members sitting here at your city council meetings. Who might they be? What might they say? How might that stifle your deliberations? I see no harm in adding to the number of commissioners up to a point, and 7 does seem reasonable. But I suggest that the council strike the third whereas of the resolution, strike the 2 sentences regarding ex officio members from 11.80.020A, and delete the phrase as voting members from 11.08.020B. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Wendy Rainey, 2500 Orca Road. And basically, I'm here as a member of various councils that have had ex officio members and councils that don't have ex officio members. And probably for the first time ever in my life, I have to completely agree with Mr. Romehill. It is a point that there's a process to put people on these councils. I totally agree with increasing the number, but then those people and those agencies that are interested in having a stake at the table need to put in and become a commissioner. There's absolutely no reason why they can't run for a seat and get voted in by the folks in town. There's no reason for them to have an ex officio seat. If they want to input, they can attend the meetings like everybody else. But at what point do you decide which agencies are more important to be sitting at that table, one or another? How many ex officio seats are you going to put into place to make sure that nobody has hurt feelings because their word wasn't heard? They can attend the meetings, they can run for a seat like everybody else, they can be elected by the community to sit on those councils, or they can be appointed like other councils are to sit on those councils. It's, you put in the work. If you want to sit at the table, you put in the work, you put in the research, you attend the meetings. It's very simple. So I do agree with adding some more seats to the table so that, it's covered for everybody to be able to get in there. But I don't agree with ex officio members. If there's no vote, then they can put their input in at the meetings like everybody else does. They really don't need to be a part of the process unless they're sitting in the audience or they're sitting at the table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mark Froneffel, 813 Woodland Drive, Cordova. So I'm here to talk against Ordinance 1200 for a couple different reasons, mostly for what Wendy has said. I don't believe that it would be right for somebody in my position who's been working for almost 10 years, attending Harbor Commission meetings, City Council meetings, to be on the Harbor Commission as a voting member to try to get a project completed like the floating fuel dock. So, yes, it's been almost 10 years that we've been working towards this project to try to get it done. But that didn't include being a voting member of the Harbor Commission. That meant being part of the process, but not part of the vote. So, the ex officio portion, I don't believe that is a good process for somebody that has a stake in the harbor, other than maybe a fisherman or somebody that's a end user, but not somebody that's a part of the group. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Burton, currently 902 Lefevre. I'm glad Mr. Romehill went first because it saves me a lot of long-winded ideas on the same topic. But essentially, I came here to say that if you're going to expand the Harbor Commission, I'm not necessarily against that. If you're going to add 2 seats, for instance, and go to 7 seats, put a sunset clause in so that once this project wraps up, it goes back to normal. The reason that the Harbor Commission initially went from 7 seats to 5 seats was problems getting a quorum some nights. So if you're going to make that step, and I guess in this scenario, it would make sense because it is a big project. There's a lot of different ideas out there. There's a lot of excitement about it. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have more input, but have them be in a, have them go through the appointment process like everything else. I disagree with the ex officio seats for the same reasons that have been stated before me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kruthoff, owner of Dutch Marine Industries. I live at lot 41, Sawmill Bay Road. And yeah, like James said, it's kind of hard to sum up more than what Dave said, but essentially I don't see a good reason why you would add 2 seats that would completely just go to one specific voting party with their own agenda and not make that just 2 seats open to the whole community for people that live here and have a long-term stake in the community. So that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
do we not have call-in capabilities anymore for people that want to comment?
We do not. Not since the building was open to the public. We haven't had it in a long time.
Okay, well, maybe put a note on pending agenda for that if I forget. Thank you.
Okay, that appears to be all of the audience comments. So chairpersons, representatives, boards and commissions. We don't have anybody on the line, correct? Is anybody on the line? We don't even have the line open, yeah?
Know if anybody was calling? I hadn't.
Okay,
From anybody.
so we don't have any representatives. PWS RCAC report is in the packet. I don't see
Move to
Robert.
approve the consent calendar?
The consent calendar is before you?
On the consent calendar, Melina Meyer is absent. Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
and Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, we don't have any minutes, any consideration of bids, reports of officers. My written report is in there. I think I mentioned this busy weekend with Nouveau on Saturday and the Science Center's ribbon cutting and tours. Anybody interested in that, certainly take advantage of that. And the Nouveau is Saturday night. There's the meet and greet with the Representative Stutes and Senator Stevens is Friday night, right? From 4 to 5:30 at the LIO. And tomorrow is the opening of the Alaska Chamber meetings. So that's, I think that starts at 4:45 or something like that, yeah? So anyway, it'll be a busy weekend around town. Should be lots of guests here in town, so we'll bring the sunshine for them. Any questions? City Manager's report then. Helen?
I had hoped to have an update on where we stand with state funding allocations. The governor's not yet signed the budget, so it probably will be maybe the next meeting, depending on how quickly he gets it going. That said, I do have on really good authority that the $3 million for the harbor is intact and is not going to be vetoed, so crossing our fingers on that. I also want to send out a kudo to the Chamber of Commerce and the broader community that was involved in the cruise ship visit that came through a couple days ago. Was that yesterday? I guess it was. Really successful. Everyone seemed to have a really good time, and I think we handled it well. There will be another ship visiting at the end of June, and I have no doubt that we will also do wonderfully well with hosting this group of folks. So I want to give a big shout out to Kathy and her team at the Chamber of Commerce. And then finally, there was another shooting tragedy, obviously, over the weekend in Texas. there have been a number of folks inquiring about what city's process is around active shooters. So I would like to suggest that for the pending agenda, we would have the police department come and give an update on active shooter training and how they would respond. And also, there's been statewide communication coming out of the governor's office as well as the public health departments that there's a huge problem with fentanyl in the state, fentanyl-laced drugs that have the potential to do significant damage to our population and kill people. So we will do 2 public awareness pieces on active shooter and the fentanyl opioid problem that's going on. That would be at the June 15th meeting. Probably would like that to be a work session to give the community an opportunity to dig a little deeper into what they can expect from cities. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, maybe just a suggestion that with the active shooter, it'd probably be good to get an update what the school intends, their policies.
Yeah, so it's a citywide response led by the police department with the schools, and we'll have the team that is managing that for our community available and give updates on how that goes. So, yeah.
And then the other comment I had was I take my garbage over to the city site there and get rid of it. Am I noticing the pavement is just covered with sand and gravel from probably the winter's use? Part of the emphasis on having that paved was to keep all the sand and gravel running down and into the fish creek down at the bottom. And also I would imagine those heavy trucks turning on that gravel all the time on asphalt is really going to put a lot of extra wear and tear on that. So it might be something to look into getting cleaned up.
That's at the Baylor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got a fairly heavy level or load on there. So.
Did anybody have any questions for the manager? Did you have a South Harbor update?
I was just going to say, I think we do have, Sam is able to give a update.
Pretty short and sweet. So our main focus right now is pounding out that RFP and getting it formatted and in a good place. We are 85 to 90%, sorry. We are working with R&M right now on the technical aspect of it, minimal qualifications and things like that. So we'll be back with that at hopefully maybe next meeting. We are working with MARAD. We've done our risk assessment that they sent us, sent it back, and we have not had any response back from them. So we're kind of in this waiting game with them. That has to be completed before the grant agreement. So it's NEPA section 106, which is done, this risk assessment, and then the letter of funds availability, which we're kind of just putting on hold until we really get solid on the funding, which is just a page long, easy type thing. So the other thing that we're waiting on MARAD is that they have templates that they are requiring us to put into our RFP. And currently those templates and the grant agreement forms are being discussed intensely, I hear, by the lawyers, and they're not available at this point. And I haven't gotten an update on that time frame. So the environmental work is cruising along. She's feeling pretty positive about that. MARAD's work. So MARAD has an EA, and then the other feds have EA, a little bit different. MARAD's will be in by the end of the month. The feds will be in shortly after that, maybe mid-July. When that goes in, they will then issue you need to get an IHA, and then that process will start. But most of that work is already done with the EA part of it. She's working on the ADEC clean water, which is state permit and essential fish habitat paperwork. So those will be done fairly shortly. And we're holding on funding. Finale's in June 10th-ish for the one grant, which is the transportation grant for 2 million, August for the infrastructure grant, because that has to go through a different entity for approval. It's different, it's this new infrastructure money and not their standard grants that they pass out, so it has to get approved somewhere else. So hopefully we'll know June 10th-ish, and the governor will sign June 10th-ish, and we'll have those solid numbers, and that would be super helpful for the RFP. Just a little more solid on what they can do. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Doesn't appear so. Thank you, Sam.
Yep.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, yeah, any questions for the manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to the clerk's report.
I just included more information about the primary election. The absentee in person is happening now during the weekdays, 8 to 4:30. And the first line in my report is about how the actual election day, the last day that she'll be here also, is June 11th, which is a Saturday. And you do need those ballots postmarked, and the post office will close early on a Saturday, but Ruth will be here till 4:30. So if people have waited till the last minute, that's a good idea to bring them into her before 4:30 on that day. Also, if you are mailing your ballots at the post office, go to the counter and get them stamped, just so that you know it's got a date on it, and it don't just put it in the slot if you're able to. And that's all I have to report. I can answer questions.
Questions for the clerk? Seeing none, we'll move on then to correspondence. And is there anybody, any comments or want to do anything with those? Okay, then we've got the ordinances and resolution. Ordinance 1200, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, amending section 11.08.020 of the Cordova Municipal Code to increase the number of Harbor Commission members from 5 to 7, and to authorize City Council to appoint up to 3 additional ex officio members to the Harbor Commission on first reading.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 1200.
Second, for purposes of discussion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, so I am definitely in favor of adding seats to the commission from 5 to 7. The number was reduced, I think it was 2002, due to lack of interest. But the last few times that this has come up, I looked back to as far as 2018. There have been more applicants for the number of seats available, so it shows that there's interest in people wanting to serve, which is a really good problem to have and not a problem at all. And so I think that would give an opportunity for, more community members to get involved, which I like. And with the big projects coming up in the harbor, it does make sense to have a broader swath of the community of the harbor users represented and participating in those discussions. And I think that'll make the commission stronger, and it'll also make the recommendations that we receive from the commission stronger if, if there's more perspective. So I'm definitely in favor of increasing the number on the commission from 5 to 7. But then as far as the ex officio language, I think there's some confusion about what an ex officio member is and isn't and can and cannot do. But I have spent some time thinking about this and looking into things, and I do agree with some of the comments that perhaps this isn't necessarily the right format for the commissions. Any resident can seek to serve on these commissions, and especially if there will be more available seats, there'll be more opportunity for people to get involved. And also, any resident or institution is able to write letters, about their stance on any issue. They can speak and attend any, these meetings. They can attend our meetings, their meetings. So I would be willing to entertain amendments to strike the ex officio language from the ordinance, but I would like to see the commission expanded.
I'd second that motion.
So what exactly was the motion, to strike the ex officio part?
Yeah. If that's the will of council, I'm willing
You want
to
to just
talk about
discuss
it.
this all before?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
That was more like
Amendments?
bringing out on the table of.
We do one round?
Well, there's a motion on the table. I second it.
She didn't make a motion, she just said she would entertain.
Willing to
She's
accept that
considering,
amendment.
she's considering the motion. Okay, Councilmember Guard, you're the second.
Yeah, I think we've got some really heavy lifts coming up with everything that's going on in the harbor. I think it's happening and changes are happening at a pretty rapid pace. I think there has been some confusion on exactly who are voting members and who wouldn't be as proposed. I'm not 1,000% sold that ex officio is how we have to do it, but we have not done as good a job as we could do communicating with users in the harbor group. And we can call them residents, we can call them whatever we want, but we're all members of the Cordova community. And there are some big users down there, like the Forest Service, like State Fish and Game, like the troopers and stuff. They're important parts of the community for life safety issues, for recreation issues, for whatever. Every part of Cordova needs a voice in this. It may not be a voting voice. Things may not go the way everybody wants them to go. I mean, however, but everybody needs to have a voice in it. We don't need to lock anybody out of speaking about this. So those are my, maybe not all 2 cents, but cent and a half.
Okay, we'll make our round here. Councilmember Baylor.
I'll yield till I can hear some information that would convince me that you need ex officio. So if you can come back to me, that'd be great.
Councilmember Sherman.
Sure. So I had seconded Ann's amendment the first time around, and I think I was the one who brought up the ex officio. I know it is something that's familiar with the chamber. I have done a lot of research since this time and have spoken to the harbor master, have spoken to numerous other entities within the city and members of the community who have reached out to me. So I guess I have a couple concerns. I'm all in favor of expanding the Harbor Commission to 7 members. I think it's appropriate, and I understand why it was reduced, and I remember why it was reduced in 2002, but I think it's appropriate now. It's just like what we did for the Cordova Center. We had broad group of the community come in to help guide us through the big process of the project. Science Center did the same thing for their facility, too. It was a very broad group. So I think that's a good idea, and I think having 7 members through this process is a good idea. I don't know whether we need to sunset it, but we can always revisit it. We can revisit any commission and the amount of their members. I have, spoken with the harbor master too, and I understand why the state has their own dock. I mean, they kept it when they gave us the harbor. But that's good. They're an entity that uses the harbor. Forest Service has a great little lease that they have that's been in there perpetual forever. Coast Guard has a slip that they rent for their wreck boat. So they're kind of a paying customer, which I didn't know until now. But so since that, I don't think being an ex officio would be something I would want to do, because you wouldn't have a vote. And I would rather run for a commission seat and be on the commission and have a vote. But for some reason, I guess I feel like we need to either include these other harbor users and broaden our commission. And I guess I'm willing to let the ex officio part of this go, but not the 7, not the expansion to 7. And I would encourage us to broaden and diversify the Harbor Commission. I'm a user. I have a puker boat, but I pay year-round to use the harbor. So I pay attention. I read the harbor minutes. I don't go to the meetings, although I'll probably start. But I just think it's a pretty big project, and I think the broader we could make the commission and its diversity, the better strength we're going to have in an end project. So I, too, open to the amendments that have been suggested or considered or mentioned.
Thank you. Kristen, or Councilmember Carpenter.
Thanks. I have a couple questions that maybe the clerk or someone else can help me out with. Do we not allow for ex officio members of on our other commissions? I thought there was mention in the code of planning and zoning and other commissions having provisions to allow for.
There are ex officio on other boards and commissions. I
But
don't
as
have them all right in front of me, but
Yeah.
the mayor and the manager are for all of them, but
I think it'll
I feel like
Planning-
Parks and Rec
Planning is
is,
the engineer,
yeah, and that Parks and Rec
but
has
it's all
planning
employees
director.
or the mayor, city manager, mayor,
Okay,
um,
okay.
city engineer, city attorney, I think is on one.
Mhm. And then my other question is for ex officio seats, are they designated for a certain entity or are they, I mean, because it's, I guess the way I read the code, it said city manager and there was another, maybe it said harbor master for the harbor commission, but it seemed like there was the option to appoint other folks, that they weren't designated to a specific entity, is how I read it, but
I'd have to pull it up to look. for
Okay.
sure.
I'm just trying to understand what it would actually.
Has joined
Who was that?
on the conference call.
I've just, Holly was trying to listen in, so if there's any questions around code that we can't answer, she's
Okay.
able to.
Thanks.
Was that Holly? Was that Holly on the line?
She's not yet, I'm just
Oh.
letting her know that.
Who just dialed in?
I'm here.
Oh, you are,
Okay.
okay, great.
Great.
Councilmember Carpenter? You're still?
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so how do I want to start here? It's become abundantly clear that this body, through multiple actions over the last year, is unhappy with the current makeup of the Harbor Commission. I do not understand why, but multiple times this body has completely ignored its experts, subject matter experts, that it nominated and confirmed, and done opposite or just done what, the council has done whatever the council sees fit, which is their prerogative. I take concern with the packing the court approach here, though I do not disagree that we could go to 7. I have grave concern about going to 10, especially with designating seats, which, as I read this, this proposed language, you would be appointing up to 3 other ex officio members who represent persons, entities, or local, federal, or state agencies. So, yes, those people would be designated to represent those agencies or entities that use the city, port, and harbor facilities. So, if it's the will of council to go to 7, I would support that. I would say that I think that any representation needs to be commensurate to the user groups that are being represented. I do not want to see this commission be grown to an unruly size, and I don't want to see the commission be out, I don't want to see one small subsector out represent the majority user group, which is 90% commercial, 10% other uses. Currently, the commission makeup, which I have served on for 10 years, there's 4 commercial fishermen and 1 mariculture / dive salvage operator. So we're currently at 80-20. Expanding it to 7 and with a emphasis in diversity of user group would, if we nominate 2 more people I think at least one of them needs to be a commercial fisherman of some sort. And I guess that's where I'm at. I would like to make a motion to refer this back to staff and have them bring it back up for another first reading with all of the various language regarding the ex officio seats stricken. I think that would be the cleanest way to do this. And I guess I'll wait and see if I get a second.
I do want to comment
Okay.
first, so.
Well, maybe I'll
Is
wait
there-
to make my motion until everybody has a chance to comment, and I'll before yielding my time, I'll finish by saying that I feel like this ex officio part was added as a knee-jerk reaction to a letter from one entity who could have showed up at the meeting. They could have showed up at the meeting tonight. They have people on paid staff that are government affairs people that are supposed to keep track of this. This entity has been to 2 or 3 meetings in 10 years at the Harbor Commission level. The only meetings they ever show up at are the ones where their lease is being discussed. They said we need more public process and more public planning, and then failed to show up to the North Harbor Public Planning meeting that we had. It was a regular meeting. And so I feel like this ordinance is a knee-jerk reaction to that, and I think that that is poor form for this council to take and move this forward. I think that this needs to be referred back to staff and brought back. I have no problem going from 5 to 7, as long as we keep the representation commensurate to the user groups. Thank you.
Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, well, I don't support the ex officio, but Councilmember Jones said, because I have trouble with this diversity, that can be interpreted in many ways. But diversity of user groups, I do like, because that kind of pinpoints it that diversity is not somebody that lives up on the hill there and doesn't even have a boat and doesn't use the harbor, but maybe they're pink or something. But diversity of user group, and that's a group that is actually using the harbor. So I don't know if that wording is in there, but going back to staff, I think I would like to see that to support it as a reason for going to the 7, which I do support. You know, in the notes here, it has, this change may serve to alleviate conflicts in adding voices. Well, I Googled conflict. A serious disagreement, typically a protracted one. Now, serious disagreement or argument. Well, we don't have that. We haven't had that. We had one complaint. And I think that entity didn't get what they wanted, and they didn't want to follow the process, and they want special attention. I think it was said here by public comment. We have a process. If you go to the meetings and you can say your piece, if you don't get what you want, you can go talk to the city manager, you can go talk to the mayor, you can come to council. There's many venues to try to get yourself heard. And some of these comments that I've heard that, well, we've got to do a better job broadening participation. Well, we say that about council all the time too. I mean, we know what it's like. We'll discuss stuff and we can't get people to a meeting and they show up and say, I didn't know about it. So I don't see what any of these ex officio, the state or federal, what their expertise they would bring to the harbor to help them manage it. There isn't none. And then 2 of them, the Forest Service and the state, if they're specifically there for the meeting about the harbor remodel to redo, they would have a conflict of interest because they're lobbying specifically for their purpose. So I don't support it. Like you said, 90% of the Harbor Commission is commercial, or harbor is commercial. You do have, you know, Andy Craig, who's mariculture, and he's also salvage. You have Krista Hoover, who's marketing association, and then the rest of them, you know, represent the commercial fishing, which is good, and they've done a good job. I also had to kind of comment is the city council has 7 members, and we do some pretty heavy lifting in this community, budgets, hire the manager, school budget. We do it with 7. We don't do any ex officios, you know, we handle it. So I would support the motion to refer it back to staff and come only as an additional 2 seats for a total of 7 seats on the Harbor Commission.
I just got a quick comment in there. We talk about one user group not deserving representation because they'd be supporting a specific entity. And then we talk about other user groups deserving specific representation because they're the largest user group. And that's not a good way to make things function well. I don't know that we're going to come out with a different end product, but we've got a big project here that we go along with not much happening for a long time. You know, we don't get much for reports, and then something moves ahead and everything's got to move really fast. And I just think if it's not ex officio or whatever we want to do, we got to do a better job of everybody having a voice. Whether or not we come up with something different than the floating net mending dock we want to have, I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. I haven't seen enough proposals yet. But everybody that's a user down here should have a voice in this. And we talk about the one entity in specific that has sour grapes because they didn't get what they wanted and they didn't show up at the one meeting. And I may be wrong on this, but I think that was kind of a fast-track meeting that all the information didn't get out on until later on. I just think everybody needs to be represented in this. We all know where our bread is buttered and where the biggest section of users are from the harbor. But everybody needs to be able to sit there and say what they need in it. And then we have to balance as a community and see what the biggest needs are for the biggest user groups.
I've had my hand up. Thank you. I'd like to move to amend the motion that's on the table by deleting the language in the title, put a period after 7, and delete the rest of the title of the ordinance. In the 4th whereas, delete the phrase after the word users in the first line, delete the text, and allow for the participation of additional ex officio members. So delete that phrase.
Where you at on
Right here.
A?
The 4th
Oh,
whereas.
Whereas,
So
yeah.
where am I starting to strike out at?
After the word users,
Users. Okay. And
so and allow for the participation of additional ex officio members. Delete that phrase. Yeah.
I got a parliamentary question, if I could.
Well, I'm not finished.
Making a motion.
I'm making the motion. In the code language, the part of the resolution labeled 1108.020, the sentence in bold underline that begins, I think it's the middle 2 sentences. So city council may, by majority vote, appoint up to 3 other ex officio members who represent persons, entities, or local, federal, or state agencies or entities that use the city port and harbor facilities. And also the next sentence, ex officio members of the commission shall have the right of the floor to participate in all discussions, but shall not have a vote on any matter before the commission. Delete those 2 sentences. And that's my motion.
I'll
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Just a question, I guess, for the clerk. Substantial enough to have another first reading?
That was my question.
I'm not sure. Holly's going to have to weigh in on that. But the one part of that second sentence, ex officio, does relate to
To the other 2,
existing
yes,
ex officio.
right, yes.
So you
okay.
might-
So I will Can I stand correct, or I don't know about corrected, can I modify my motion? So just
I don't-
delete the middle sentence.
I don't think it needs to be changed. I think you said put a period after the city manager and harbor master shall be ex officio members of the commission, period, and then strike the rest of that.
So I would say delete the sentence following that.
Just
City council may, by majority vote, appoint up to 3 other ex officio members who represent persons, entities, or local, federal, or state agencies or entities that use the city port and harbor facilities.
And then leave the ex.
And leave the rest of
members.
it. Yeah, because that refers to the city manager and harbor master. Yeah.
Everybody understand that?
Yes.
And there was a question, I think, Holly, I don't know if you're on the line. The question was, oh, here we go. Are you still on?
Yes, I'm still here. And I would recommend that you do have the second reading. I mean, I think it's on the line. It's a little gray here, but this is an ordinance that seems to have a lot of public interest. And for that reason, because it is a significant shift, I would just give it, I would
Have another first
bring
reading?
it back as a substitute or just bring it back and so it has another introduction and hearing.
Yeah, so we would have another
First reading.
First reading.
another first reading. Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's what I was going to suggest earlier is, instead of sitting here and nitpicking this line and that line and this line and that line and being here for all night, it's a lot cleaner, in my opinion, to just give guidance to staff, refer this back to staff, instruct them to bring it back to the next meeting for another first reading. That way they can get the attorney's opinion without, we can nitpick this thing all night, but I think that would be the cleanest way. I think the staff at this point kind of has pretty good direction from this body, and I would not vote in support of Councilmember Carpenter's amendment for that reason. I would rather see us send this back to staff and have it come back.
So you're making another amendment to?
I think that one has to be cleared off the floor before I can do that.
You can amend an amendment.
I know,
guess
but
I'm-
his goal is to make an entire other motion, I think.
Yeah.
To refer.
We have a motion on the floor. I can't.
Right, I agree.
How can we refer motions to the staff then if we can't make a motion on something that's on the floor?
Well, you refer.
Just need to
We're in
vote.
the middle of a motion that we need to vote on.
No, well, a motion to refer to staff trumps a motion on the table.
Does it?
Yeah, it does.
Holly, are you hearing that?
Well, this sure feels cleaner.
Yes, I mean, I'll defer to Susan on that, on the order, but I think I'm not positive. I think you would just deal with the motion that you have and then go on to the next motion. Or the person can withdraw the motion on the floor.
Hey, anybody want to comment on the amendment that's on the floor?
Kristen's amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Kristen's amendment.
I made a motion and I don't know that there was a second.
There was two.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, all right.
I wrote Kathy as.
No,
Okay,
I would
for
just say I
Kathy.
would approve, I'm going to vote for the cleaner motion. I'll vote no because
Can the motion on the floor be withdrawn?
Yes.
Yes.
Either way. Okay, whatever.
I guess I'm just thinking if we're going to amend it, if it has to come back for a reading anyway, it can be amended and that version that's what can come back for the other reading.
we're all getting the same thing we want. It's just how do we get there?
Right.
To me, it was just confusing to delete this, delete that. I think if staff, if staff understands that if we got concurrence that we support 5 to 7 members, then they come back with the ordinance with that correctly written.
Yeah.
Do you want to vote down Kristen's, if we take action, voting action on her amendment, then we can clear the slate and then refer.
Well, we could also just do a friendly amendment and,
She can withdraw it
yeah.
if she wanted to.
We can also just vote for it.
Or we could vote for it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay, we can vote for it.
Or you could vote it down.
We're not doing records.
She's not withdrawing it, so any other discussion on the amendment? Schaefer?
I'm in favor of the amendment because I think, too, it gives good direction to staff for the next meeting. I also don't think there's much nitpicking that needs to be done beyond what we just did. So I think that'll be all cleared up. I'm in favor.
So I too am in favor, and I would, I think Kristen has captured what we needed to have. It's pretty clear. I've got my notes. I think it's up to staff and the attorney to decide whether or not it comes back as first reading or second reading. But if it's second reading, all the better, we can move it forward.
Okay, so, so I'll vote for it because I don't understand. Is this the amendment? Basically, it's going to go back, it'll come back to us with just a resolution supporting from 5 to 7.
Correct.
Nothing on the ex officio.
Right.
Okay, and staff, everybody else, then I'm good with that then. But we'll get there. Same way.
Right.
Well, it hasn't been referred to staff. We still
Right.
got a main motion after this amendment.
Right.
So,
Okay.
okay, so the amendment, everybody ready to vote?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we going to do a roll call?
Yeah, might as well.
Melina Meyer is absent. Kristen Carpenter.
Yes.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
Ken Jones.
No.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
So the motion on the amendment carries.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion, which is to approve the ordinance now as amended. Any further motions or discussion?
No, well, I would make motion refer it back to staff because I'm not going to approve. So are we approving an ordinance that's going from 5 to 7? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
So I think this needs to come back as the first reading. We all talk about, everybody needs to know what we're doing and representation. And there's no rush on this. If we come back with first reading, so that if we referred it back to staff, then it would come back next meeting.
And I think that was Holly's recommendation, that we should have a new reading, given the nature of the issue.
So even if it's approved
Yeah.
at this, with the amendment, even if it's approved,
That's
it's
what I
coming back
understood.
for a first reading.
Right.
Again.
Right.
Okay. So we are, just so everybody's clear, we're approving, the only thing we're approving is going from 5 to 7.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And delete.
And
Yep.
with the understanding it'll come back
And to, yes, have another first
for
reading.
clear for everybody. Cool.
Yes.
assuming there's no other wording that we're missing somewhere in there. And staff can clarify that before the
Yeah.
next reading. So, withdraw your motion?
Yes.
Still looking for a
Yes.
second?
As long as it's coming back as a first reading, yes.
Okay. We can make sure we clarify that at pending agenda as well. Okay, let's take a roll call on the main motion as amended.
Tom Baylor.
Yes.
Ken Jones.
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter.
Yes.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
Melina Meyer is absent. Kathy Sherman.
Yes.
6-0.
Nothing like taking the long road.
We did it, though.
You got just make sure that gets reviewed by everybody to make sure that the intent was all captured in there. Okay, resolution 06-2218, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, setting the property tax mill levy for the 2022 tax year at 11.54 mills for all properties in the City of Cordova.
Mr. Mayor?
Move to approve.
Yeah. Second.
Okay, Councilmember Guard.
This generates the volume of revenue we budgeted for in this year's budget, so if we approved it once, we should approve it twice now that we have an official number for it, so I'm in favor of it.
Councilmember Carpenter?
Agreed. And I really appreciated having the history of mill rates in Cordova because I think a lot of it seems like it's a common refrain. People say, oh my gosh, taxes never go down. And in fact, they have gone down. I mean, they've gone up and down over the years. So I appreciate seeing the history and can think about what was happening at some of those times when we needed additional funds. And I did a little bit of math. It's very crude, but the difference between using the 2021 mill rate and the proposed amount that was approved in the budget is I just did it by 800 households, which I know isn't quite accurate because I know some businesses are paying property tax, but it came out to $145.63 per household. So again, I know that's a crude measure, but it just seemed like something we could absorb for the services that we get from the city. And so I am in support of the motion.
Okay, Councilmember Sherman.
I'm in support of the motion, and I'm very pleased to see that it's just we're averaging nicely, and it's nice to not jump around.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I'm also in support for the reasons above. Thank you.
Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I would support this. The one thing I think I'll always have a little bit of a problem with is a few years ago when we raised the annex to be the exact same as the rest of the city, even though they don't get the same services. So I just wanted to make sure that was on the record, but I'll support it as written.
Councilmember Baylor.
Yeah, well, I will support it, but I do have some issues with it. I mean, we're basically balancing our budget with, I don't know what it is, $500,000-$600,000 of government funds. Without that, we'd be looking at a heck of a bigger mill rate here, and we need to wake up and understand that that's happening. Because I hate to 2 years from now go with, you're all going to be up to 14 mills. That being said, I also look forward to when we get the new assessor company in here. I think you're going to see values across the board go up and be equalized. Everybody's paying their fair share instead of the way it is now. And if that's the case, then we may even be able to lower the mill rate. So, but I won't vote for this tonight.
Okay, last chance, second go around. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Okay, on Resolution 622-18, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Ken Jones,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Melina Meyer is absent. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Resolution 06-22-19, a resolution of the Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, establishing the level of local school funding and approving budget of the Cordova Public School District for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023.
Move to approve.
Second.
Move Jones, seconded Carpenter to approve the budget. Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I will be supporting this. And yeah, we have great schools here. Lucky to have them. Received a bunch of forest receipts for the schools. I have no problem with this as written.
Hey, Councilmember Carpenter.
Yeah, I would echo Councilmember Jones's comments, and I'll be voting in support.
Councilmember Baylor.
No comment. Support it.
Councilmember Sherman.
No, I'm in support, and I appreciated the school board meeting with us and explaining all this ahead of time, so thank you.
Councilmember Guard.
Yeah, I'm in support of it. I think it was also a really good dialogue we had with the schools this year to where we understood where the needs were and why we had the needs for the dollars instead of just saying we have to have it or else. So I'm in favor.
Councilmember Schaefer.
I'm also in favor. I just had one question about the timing of Forest Service receipt? When do those come in?
Typically in the fall,
Okay,
so it'll be this calendar year.
okay, and that
And that's
aligns
our
with
budget.
the, okay.
Yeah, right. The school year starts July 1, goes through June 30th, and our city fiscal year goes January through December. So this will be expended in our budget year 22. It will front load their 22-23 school year, so they have resources to pay bills. And then we'll revisit the balance of any amount that is needed when we do the budget in December for the second half of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, I guess just one thing I forgot to mention. I see we do have a school board representative in the audience, and as we move towards our budgeting process this year, one thing that is very important and dear to me And I know many in the community is going to be establishing or reestablishing the pre-K program. And if we're going to be fully funding the school, I'd like to see us get those full services back, and to maybe bring that request during our budgeting process, if it is going to, that way we can get it in our budget this year for reestablishing that pre-K program next year. So, thanks.
Yeah, second round, anybody? Roll call, please.
Where am I? On 6/22/19, Ken Jones,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer is absent, Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. So now we're on to item 19, or 17. Council action to protest or waive the protest for new Cordova liquor license brew pub classification, the Big Fish Brew Pub, for Becky Chapik.
Move to approve?
Second.
For purposes of discussion.
What are we
Well, wait.
approving? We need to either
Oh, I'm
waive
sorry.
or protest.
I move
would
to
be a-
waive protest.
Okay.
Oh.
Second. All right, yours.
Okay, so we moved Schaefer, seconded Jones. Okay, Councilmember Schaefer.
I have a question for clarification, because they have, what happens with their existing liquor license? Is this in addition to?
Yes. Yes.
So confusing.
Excuse me. So the state of Alaska has just done a significant revision of their alcohol licenses. However, those don't go into effect for a while. So as it stands now, brew pub licenses are given to entities with a liquor license, and then they get basically an additional license to brew beer. They are population-based, so we are allowed, and I think you may remember this in the conversation that we had last December when we had a brewer license and there were two competing applications. We get one brew pub and one brewery license for the population size that we have here in Cordova. So this is the sole brew pub license that is available for our community. Yeah.
But I do not think they lose their beverage dispensary license.
No.
They maintain that.
Yeah.
They'll have two.
Right.
If that's what you were asking.
That was, well, yeah, I wanted to make sure we weren't losing a
You weren't
liquor license.
recluding somebody else from.
Well, if one goes away in Cordova, we might lose it if it doesn't get sold, but goes away for some other reason, like if the city were to protest because of population and the fact that we have more than we should.
Who's the second? Jones? Okay.
So initially, I seconded to get it on the table. Initially, I would like to support this. I think that anytime we can support a new business popping up, that's a great thing. I do have a little concern that this business will actually be open to the public for, I guess, more than the minimum required from this particular applicant. I also would have concern that this would preclude any other dispensary license holder from being able to get a brew pub. So, yeah, I don't think that we should protest, but this is the only brew pub license Cordova is going to get.
Councilmember Guard.
I share some of the same concerns as my esteemed council member who just spoke, Councilmember Jones. I'm all in favor of not protesting this, but I would like to refer this to staff to see if they can come up with some kind of performance language in it, to where maybe we could full-heartedly support it now, but if it isn't able to perform, because this is tax revenue for Cordova. all these businesses are. And if we only get one and we get one that for whatever reason doesn't function, that's a loss of tax revenue we've got. So I'd like to see staff come up with some kind of language we could use that says we support it at this point in time, but if it doesn't perform next cycle when it comes around for renewal, we probably wouldn't support it if it hasn't performed by then. Or something. I don't know what the appropriate language would be, but I'd like to refer it to staff to get some performance standards in there, if we could.
Is that a motion to refer to staff?
I have a motion on the table to refer to staff.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Hearing no second, then.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to refer to staff. Okay, you got more? Doc?
Kind of said about what I was going to say.
Okay, Councilman Sherman?
Well, yes, I agree. I think we need a little bit more information. I guess I wasn't thinking along the lines as Councilman Jones, so I'm glad he brought that up. Because this whole thing is very confusing with the brew pubs and the breweries and the licensing.
Councilmember Carpenter?
If we refer to staff, are we not waiving the right to protest?
We don't have to have our letter in until the 20th of this month. So we have another meeting. We can refer to staff. They can come up with some kind of language for it. Before the next meeting, we'd have time to decide what we want to do with it then and move on.
But the language is for our use, right? Not for the states. I mean, we're gonna tell the state one way or the other.
Yeah, but we can, it's not just yes or no we put down on the paper. I'm sure that there's a letter that can go along with it that says we support it. I mean, this whole thing is so new and we haven't even promulgated regulations from this, so we have no idea how it's truly gonna function. All we've had are statutes that have passed yet. And they haven't even been signed into law yet, so we're doubly not sure what's going on. And this is a one-shot deal for tax revenues for Cordova, and I'd hate to see us blow something. Just every little bit helps.
Yeah. Well, if we have time for another meeting, then.
On the motion to refer to staff, Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I brought up my concern not necessarily to get this thing referred back to staff. I don't think I would support referring this back to staff. That's kind of I don't know. I think that we can support this with just telling the applicant that, you know, if it doesn't open, the next time this comes up for renewal, we may protest. I don't think we need to refer this back to staff. I just don't want to slow them down. Sounds like we have till the 20th, so.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a question on that too, because I don't know that might not solve what we're trying to solve. But would it give us more weight with the alcohol marijuana board if we voice concerns this cycle for coming up to next cycle?
I think as I understand it, the alcohol just wants, they want to know whether a community waives protest or protests. If council wants to assign standards that would be communicated to any applicant, that would be between council and the applicant. That says, in order to get our support for this application, we need to understand that you will be open, you know, in 10 months, or, I mean, whatever you guys do. I'm not quite sure what performance standards would be there, but one would assume that if you're approving, you're not waiving, you're waiving your right to protest, that that's all the ABC board wants to know. So they won't take into consideration any of the other details that we might attach to that to determine how we recommend or don't recommend in the future.
Well, except that we've done that before. We've done waive protest with conditions. And then we made it clear to the business owner and to the ABC board what our conditions were. And then we had to follow through with policing our own conditions and then get back with the board to say they met them or they didn't.
Yeah, and they don't want anyone to be arbitrary and capricious. So if we establish rules and we can give a rationale to the ABC board while we might be protesting, it's got to be based in facts. And those facts have to be established by council locally. Otherwise, there's no standing to protest.
I'm not interested in making a bunch of requirements on the applicant. It's just, I just want to know that it's going to happen.
Councilmember Carpenter, did you have any on the motion? Sherman, any further? The motion on the table is to refer to staff.
No, I'm still in favor of that.
Anybody last chance for refer to staff? Hearing none, all those in favor of referring to staff, say aye.
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 Oppose?
Aye.
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 I'm sorry.
Do we have a roll call on
Yeah.
on that, please?
Okay. On referring item 17 to staff. Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Kristen Carpenter,
No.
Melina Meyer is absent. Ken Jones,
No.
Kathy Sherman,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
No.
Jeff Guard.
Yes.
That's 3 to
That's
3.
3-3. The motion
The motion
fails.
fails. Okay, so the motion on the table is to waive our right to protest. Any further discussion on that? We go down the list again. Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, I guess I just raised my concern just on the past performance of the applicant. Strictly, I hope to see this open and flourishing. I just would hate to see us lock up the only license and not have it open. So as long as we convey that to the applicant, I think that's good enough, and I'm fine voting this to where we don't slow them down at all. I want to see them get opened and operating as quickly as possible.
Councilmember Guard?
Yeah, I'm in support of the applicant not protesting. I think we've probably made it clear, our intention's clear already, so I'd like to have a good beer out there soon.
Councilmember Baylor?
Good. Good.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, I'm in favor of waiving our right to protest. I also have the same concerns, but I think that this will come before us then, in the next 3 years, and we always go through the, their forms if they're, we have another time to assess in the future. So I hope it's successful, because I too would like to have a nice good beer.
Conflict of interest.
No financial.
A mega pint.
I'm in favor.
Okay, Carpenter?
I'm in favor.
Councilmember Sherman?
I think our point's been made.
Okay. All those in favor of waiving your right to protest, say aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carries unanimous. Pending agenda. What did we have for pending agenda? We had call-in line for public.
I guess kind of goes back to our previous discussion today about getting more input from the community. If it's not a big headache for staff, I think we should have that call-in line. I guess if council personnel can call in, the people should be able to call in and comment. But maybe there was a reason for not doing it, or what else council thinks. But I know there was 2 or 3 fishermen today that contacted me, and they were going to call in and comment on this harbor issue, but they weren't unable to. And think about it, it is an opener, and the constituents that this affects are all out fishing. So I don't know.
Guard.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of giving everybody as much voice as we can give them. My only question on this is, how much does this complicate or raise our costs for teleconference services? Because the more we use the one call-in line we've been using, the less we can use it for special occasions when it needs to just be council or.
Yeah, maybe we can just ask the clerk to give us a report on that at the next meeting or some future meeting. We don't want to debate, we can't debate it now. We don't want to get into debate right now, so we need some information. We need to know the answers to some of those questions before we can understand.
I would perhaps suggest to the mayor, if he got concurrence, that council thought it was a good idea, otherwise it's kind of wasting staff's time. If nobody else agrees with the premise. But
what's the will of council?
This is kind of voting on stuff and taking action on pending agenda stuff.
Well, is the will of council to ask the
two
clerk
council
or
members
okay.
to get it, and I would, I guess, concur that we should evaluate call-in functionality for meetings.
Yeah, see the best.
Do you want it
way.
on the
So-
pending agenda, or do you want it on next meeting or two's agenda?
You're the mayor. As long as, I think we should get it, if we're going to have it, we should get it on the next meeting, because we're going to have first reading again.
Yeah, well, I can work with the clerk and see when an appropriate time to do that is, or I'm not sure how much time it takes to research all of that, so. And what else is scheduled in the next 2 weeks? It's actually not even 2 weeks. You only get a week before the agenda has to be out again, so, yeah, there's not a lot of time. And you needed a workshop for active shooter, et cetera?
I think a work session might be helpful for the community and for council to become aware of that. As we all know, this shooting happened in a small town, and it can happen anywhere and does happen anywhere. So I think there's been enough concern raised about what do we do and how do we do it, that it might be a good informational session for you all, but your call on how that is done. But the fentanyl issue and active shooters are two community safety concerns right now. So work session or just heavy agenda item, I don't know. What do you want to do? I would bring in people who could address your questions.
What's the will of council?
Work session.
I agree.
Work session?
I second the motion.
Okay.
And are we doing it on June 15? Yes.
Yeah, we can do June 15th coming up.
6 o'clock, and we don't have a public hearing, so that's an hour. That's good, 6 o'clock.
Won't we have a first reading again?
Right, if we have a first reading, we don't have a public hearing.
Okay. Get
Public
that
hearings on site.
advertised good that we're gonna talk about that to the public.
Yes. If you guys agree it's on the agenda, then we'll make sure it's communicated.
Anything else on the pending agenda? Or get on the.
I guess I have a question. So we've talked about it quite a bit, and I just wanted to check in with the city manager on when we may be able to have a work session on incentivizing investment in Cordova and property development. And
So we staff are working very, very hard with developers and connections that we have around the state to kind of provide some guidance to you as to how we might proceed. It's going to take a couple months, probably towards the latter part of the summer, before I'll have everything complete for you guys, unless you want me to accelerate that, in which case I will.
No, I don't think we need to accelerate it. That sounds fine. I really want to take part in that workshop, and I'm gonna be gone in August, so.
Okay.
Even September would be perfect.
Yeah, we have meetings scheduled over the next month with 4 developers who do housing projects around the state. We have meetings with the financing entities Alaska Housing Finance Corporation and others around how what kinds of incentives they can help us with. So I'll gather a lot of information for all of you, and we'll have a presentation on what cities' opportunities are and what our limitations are, and how to proceed with that. But housing is my number one focus right now.
Okay, and then I guess one more thing. I've got a whole notepad full of ideas. Should I just bring that into you to bring onto that workshop? Or should I wait and just present them at the workshop?
I mean, by all means, bring them in and we can have a conversation, and I'll share where we're headed. And definitely more information is good. And my objective right at the moment is to figure out between code, state law. The state law has a lot of influence on what we can and can't do as a city government. And some of the innovative things that other communities are doing and how we might approach it. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the pending agenda? Hearing none, then that moves us on to audience participation. Any comments?
Cheryl Gleason, 609 Cedar Street. I'm here as school board president tonight. Sorry, I got into full spectator mode and missed my school district representative spot, but I appreciate your guys' support for the school district. I do think that our education system here is valued highly, and I really appreciate that. I didn't want to miss the opportunity to congratulate our tech assistant here on his graduation from high school.
Wake up.
Hello.
Hello again.
Cheryl's congratulating you.
I just put you on the spot, and I was just congratulating our tech assistant on his graduation from high school. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Cheryl.
That was amazing.
Hi, Becky Chapik, 608 Cedar Street. Thank you for doing me the favor of allowing this brew pub. It's kind of an experimental thing. It's not on a big scale like the brewery is going to be, but I will do what I can, and I'll be visiting again because my next move is I want to bring the license into Cordova because I cannot perform successfully, I don't feel, in such a small venue as the airport. There's only 2 planes a day. They're an hour and a half apart. I don't like getting into trouble with the stewardesses for sending people with too much up to, I mean, it's just really a difficult venue. And with the price of gas and with the price, so you're going to be hearing from me again, and I will do everything I can to bring this into fruition because I have a thought, and I think it's worth exploring. So thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy Rainey, 2500 Orca Road. I'd like to thank council for seriously considering the ex officio issue and having a reasonable conversation on the structure of council. And I do want to caution council, perhaps sitting in the audience and listening to your discussion. In the same meeting, you called out a business who put in an application to start a new business with which seems like her intention is to actually pull through with that business. And you called her out to start that. In the same meeting, you discuss having a work session to incentivize new businesses. So you may want to rethink how you come across to the business owners and spectators, because that the concerns that you have weren't really, I feel, appropriate in that discussion. The discussion was, do you want it to go? Do you have a motion for it to go before the alcohol board or not? That discussion maybe is better served later with the actual business owner. This is an application process, and I felt like you guys kind of called her out on that, and I didn't think that was quite maybe the best way to handle that. So, and that's just my personal opinion as somebody in the audience watching a new business come before the council, which is a daunting process when there's so many unknowns with that new process and permitting process. So maybe, incentivizing, maybe in the future, you may want to have a liaison in place to work with new business owners so that they understand how things are processed, how things come forward. Possibly the chamber could be involved in having one person designated to speak with new business owners coming forward and make the process a little bit less daunting and intimidating for folks wanting to start new. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate you guys covering everything and having the conversations that needed to happen. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy.
Tony Schnella, Cordova Harbor Master. I want to appreciate what council, the discussion on ex officio. I agree with what you were talking about. Moving to 7 from 5 is not a bad idea at all. We have had more interest on the Harbor Commission for people putting in for it, so I think it's a good thing to move to 7. And if no one said it enough, I want to thank everybody that has helped with this harbor project. Sam, Curtis, Helen, council, of course, and the community is just big. And the Harbor Commission, all the meetings they've sat through, and whether we agreed on everything or not, it's been a heavy lift for everybody, and we couldn't do it without everyone else. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, well, that's all the audience, so council comments. See a list here. We're at Councilmember Jones.
Man, I guess I get to go first. Be into the right of the mayor's seat. It's a couple times tonight. Thanks everybody for showing up. I agree with the actions that we took tonight. Here, the concerns about how that may have came off. That was not my intention. I definitely support this, as we saw in the vote, and I wish the Big Fish Brew Pub the best of luck, and can't wait. And I agree that the Harbor Commission change should be brought back for a first reading, and I'm glad that we got there after all that. So, thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Sherman.
Well, I missed the last meeting, so I wasn't able to commend the water department, but I know how hard those guys work, and I was really happy to see them get that award again. It's a great group of people. And they also fixed the leak on 2nd Street before I could even mention it. It was done today, so. And the fire department response last evening was pretty impressive. My neighbor serves on the fire department, and we watched him race down the road. Then we saw the smoke, and then the smoke went away. And it was pretty amazing. So kudos to them. And I really wanted to, I worked on the cruise ship day, on Memorial Day up at the museum, and I wanted to give kudos to Mimi, who was there from 8:30 in the morning until I don't know when she actually got home. But we had 2 other historical society volunteers plus the city manager, and Helen was the best greeter and meter we have probably ever had in the museum. And I'm pretty sure we were over 200 people, which was pretty good because there's, I don't know, 350 on the boat, but that was a pretty good turnout. So, and we needed all 4 of us at certain points in time. So, but it was a really good first visit. So.
Good. Councilmember Baylor.
Oh. Well, that's good with the cruise ship. The notion that we got to try to do more to bring people to the meetings is one that's been talked about for the last 30 years that I've been paying attention. And I think city does a good job of noticing these meetings, and it's up to the people to pay attention, and see what's going on and come to the meeting. And if they don't get to, 25 years ago, I had an item in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. They ruled against me. I thought they were wrong in that ruling. I asked one of the members after the meeting, why did you vote that way? He said, well, people that were opposing me, he said, well, they were sitting there and they're nice people. I didn't want to hurt their feelings. So I then wrote a letter, took that to the mayor, protested it, which is your right to council. Council looked at all the facts and then and gave it, the judgment in favor of me, and I moved on with my building project. The reason I say that is these boards and these commissions, we have a process. You go to the meetings, you can speak at the beginning of the meeting. If you think you've got something on there, you can talk to whoever's running the meeting, the harbor master, the mayor, you can get on the agenda. There are multiple ways that you can get your point across. And even when you don't get your point across, like perhaps the harbor commission, you then have council to come to because we approve everything. So nothing gets approved till they get another shot at it. So I don't know if we can get any more fair than that, really. I mean, I appreciate everybody coming, but I'll tell you, when I've got something coming up, I'm paying attention, I'm coming to the meetings. That's just the way the system works. I don't think we can do much more than what we do. And thanks to staff for everything, and I'm done.
Thank you, Councilmember Guard.
I kind of agree with part of what Councilmember Baylor was saying, but not quite all of it. This is kind of a different deal. This isn't day-to-day business. We're in a planning process for a harbor renovation that we're going to live with for a long, long time. And I just don't want to see any user group get run over and not get a meaningful voice in this for planning. They may not get what they want, but everybody should have a voice in this. And it's not a business as usual thing. Because of what's going on and the function of how it works. It's not approving a variance for a lot or whatever like you were looking for in a building site. And I don't know what it was, but I guess it was something along those lines. And I don't know if we can come up with a better way to include everybody's voice in it, but it is different than that, and everybody needs a voice. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming to the meeting tonight and all the audience participation. It's really helpful to us. And I would also like to say about the harbor ordinance that it did not come from a place of like not approving of the job that the Harbor Commission is doing or the members of the commission, which was mentioned earlier. Most of us here are sitting or have sat on those commissions, and we know how much time and work and energy people put into the boards. And I am so grateful for everyone that's serving on those boards and commissions and putting in that time, because it is a lot of work and you don't have to do it. And it makes our job on council so much easier to have those recommendations from the board. We can see their discussion, we can see the different pieces of input from all of the members. And it's our job as council to take those recommendations and not just take the recommendation at face value and send it off into the community. We have to weigh the priorities of the community. We talk to staff and city managers and the rest of the community. So that's our job, is to take those recommendations seriously, but not, we don't always agree with them 100%. And that's hard, but it doesn't mean we don't appreciate the work that they're putting into these, into the commissions and the time they're serving and the decisions that they're making. So thank you to everyone who is serving on those boards and commissions. And we do take the recommendations seriously, but sometimes we're just weighing the other priorities. So thank you.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Thanks. I'm going to have to ask the city manager to help me fill in some of the details, but the issue that we talked about briefly with raising awareness about fentanyl and the fact that it's in drugs that are being distributed. We've seen the impact in this town. We know, and we all saw the letter that was in the council packet from Bert Cottle, who is now working for the state. Is that what capacity he's in?
The governor.
We've heard the governor, right, okay. And then did you talk about the possibility of a workshop? Or there was some mention of, I guess, whatever we can do to raise awareness about the dangers of fentanyl, I think would
Right, and
serve us.
we did quite a few community meetings with public health and medical providers last year, and there was Narcan and other things that have been distributed around town to sites. So I think where we're at is we have a system in place, but we may not have current communication. We have a new bunch of people in the community, in the fishing fleet, and we're discussing what do we do to get the word out? Because
Keep
there is
up, keep up the messaging.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the work session will be just communication and an opportunity for you all to learn about what is available right now, both on active shooter and the opioid fentanyl
So
problem.
those two together, okay.
And we'll do them both together because there's intersection in the responders.
Yeah.
And then if there's direction from council, we'll take it to another level.
Thanks. I just think anything that we can do to keep up the messaging about fentanyl and the danger, not just response, but what can we do for prevention? Can we link stuff up with the Family Resource Center and anybody else that can?
Yeah,
that
and they're
has a
all
platform?
involved in the conversation. So we'll have those resources will be in the work session, and you'll be able to ask questions.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any objection? We will be adjourned.